Welcome to this episode of the Limitation is a Mirage podcast. On this episode, I have two guests. It's Lily and Jonam from Love with Intelligence. They are behavioural profilers who focus mostly on dating. So within this podcast, we're going to talk about the magical world of dating, online dating, face-to-face dating, how it's changed over the years, and what advice that they would give out to people who are looking to start dating. We talk about how friends can become lovers and lovers can become friends. And just anything related to dating that you can think of, we actually will approach in this podcast. So please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions. I know you're going to enjoy this one. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Welcome to this episode of the Limitation is a Mirage podcast. On this episode, I have Lily and Jonam, who are behavioural profilers who specialise in dating. So would you like to give a brief introduction as to who you are so everybody knows a bit more about you before we get into the conversation?
Yeah, fantastic. So my name's Lily. Obviously a behavioural profiler specialising in dating and relationships. I think the pair of us have got a background in hypnotherapy, NLP, behavioural profiling. We've also partnered up in business with a guy called Chase Hughes, who's also a world leader in behavioural profiling.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we've been into this world of psychological just intrigue of like, well, what's going on behind the curtain of human behavior and like what's the thoughts and what's going on behind them. So it's seeing behind that mask and getting to know each other, getting to know people better so you can have more success in dating, like healthier, more successful, more safe relationships. So it's fascinating.
Brilliant. That's how I got introduced to you, through some of the stuff Ben was doing, so our friend Ben Corral. And just the way you described it there, that you want people to have like real connection, basically, is whereas in this day and age, we're very good at like even this connection is as real as most people get now with people with Facebook and social media. But before we get into all that stuff, I suppose that if we take it right back, because there's going to be some people that hear behavioural profilers and go, what is that? So in a nutshell, like it's a massive subject, but as dumbed down sounds bad, but as easy to explain as possible, what is a behavioural profiler?
So behavioral profiling is based on seeing all of the communication a person is giving you. Over 2/3 of communication is non-verbal. Like the tiny minority is the words we say. The rest is all non-verbal. It's how we say it. The body's communicating honestly the entire time. And most of the time we miss it because we're maybe not even paying attention to the words people say, never mind what they're showing us, because we're too distracted by what's inside our heads. So the ability to focus and see everything in front of you that the other person's presenting to you and everything they're communicating to you, so you can read the communication from their behavior and build a profile from there.
Yeah, I love saying the words, it's given people the opportunity to see the truth. Because I think with dating, especially, we're so keen to put our, best foot forward. And it's not us, no one's perfect. Everyone has their little quirks. So when we can take the mask away and allow people to actually see the truth in that person, it means that you're actually opening them up to actually communicate in a deeper way, in a deeper level. Because I think a lot of relationships nowadays are quite superficial. You think of Tinder, you're swiping.
Yeah.
And we're basing that first. We're prioritizing that first before we even prioritize that connection with that person.
You have said mask a few times. Do you believe that people wear a mask in general in public and everywhere?
Yeah, totally. Think about it. As soon as you change your environment, you're going to be different with your family, you're going to be different with your friends, you're going to be different in your work environment. So it's more about the way that we adapt our personality in situations and dating. We're waiting to see if that person's actually safe to be with. We're not going to be completely vulnerable. We're not going to be completely open with a stranger. So we're only allowing them to see what we want them to see. So it's kind of giving them the tools to actually cut through that and allowing that open communication straight off the bat.
Yeah, and that isn't to say that all masks are deceptive in terms of like dishonesty or malicious, or like I'm trying to mislead you or make you think something that's not necessarily true. It's an instinctive thing that we all do, right? There's the social conformity thing, there's politeness, there's the cultural rules around us that, okay, don't tell this kind of joke around this kind of person, and around your best friend you might do. So there are these unwritten, unspoken social laws that we're playing by just to get through life. And so in a relationship, then this is the area where a lot of people can, they throw up a lot of walls. Maybe they've been hurt in the past. Maybe they're worried and shy about what the other person might think of them. Maybe there's social pressure on, well, you got to settle down soon, so it's quite a loaded area of life. And in that high stress situation, it's really easy to revert to that defensive strategy of throwing up walls, throwing up masks, and acting how you think you're supposed to, which isn't sustainable. So like Lily says, cutting through that and getting just to the simple human truth of another person is really where it's at.
Yeah, because it's quite interesting. Yeah.
Go on ahead.
I was going to say, because it's quite interesting when we talk about the dating situation, we've got two people with these masks, and we almost refer it to almost like two actors. Two actors playing the role, interacting with each other to try and form a genuine connection from a place when they're not being themselves. So I think that's where the main issue is, where it comes to dating for most people.
I always find it strange. The people I've been around that like to date a lot and like have used things like Tinder, or when it used to be you just meet people out in the pub. And I would always say to them, like, during the week, why don't you actually try to be the person you pretend to be to win these people over? Like, another way, you pretend to be super confident, you like your job and nature and all of the bullshit that you talk about. Why don't you actually like try to live your life that way? And then you'll not continually fail at relationships, because you're attracting people that like the mask, I suppose, as you have put it. Do you think that the masks then come from a fear? Because in my experience with being around people and working with different people, that rather than being really excited about a date, they're really worried about how much they're going to fuck the date up. So it sort of like ruins it already. So do you think the mask is more from fear, or like where does it come from?
It's vulnerability. It's people being so afraid about being themselves, whether they're going to be rejected, abandoned, not accepted by the other person. So if they put this mask forward of what they think that this person would want and would accept and would, be really happy with, then number one, if it's not their kind of personality they're putting forward, them themselves not getting rejected. So I think it's almost like by putting that false person in front that's not really them, it's the best version of them. If it gets rejected, it's not actually rejecting them for who they are.
Yeah, you can't fail if you don't really try. That's the way
I
think with people. Like I used to ask guys whenever I first got into hypnosis, I did street hypnosis first.
Nice.
So doing the street hypnosis and mentalism, guys would see me chat to groups of people, and especially women, and they'd be like, how do you do that? Teach me how to do that, how to like come across confident. I'd be like, I'm not a pickup artist, just go and talk to people and get used to it. And then I'd be like, what's the worst thing that can happen? If you go and ask the girl, does she want a drink or a date? And she says no, why do you care? Like, she's saying no to how you look at that moment and how you approached her and what you said, not who you are as a person. So do you teach people how to overcome like the fear of approaching people and chatting to them? Because like it's easier now, I suppose, with like you don't have to approach, you just, I don't remember what direction you go, just whatever.
I think it's like one of those, if you actually know how to form a great connection with someone, it just takes the stress and the worry. And I think where people are afraid to actually connect with people, it's just because they don't know how. We're often afraid of what we don't know. And I think it's just knowing actually how to get past that, hey, you okay, babes, and things like that on those messages, or, the cheesy chat up lines. It's like cutting through that crap, basically.
there's the dating dance, right? And other species, they
Yes.
have it very clear. We live in the countryside here, so you see birds doing all this mad stuff, and there's like, in nature, it's very clear, like, here's how to get a mate. In humans, it's quite complicated, or we make it complicated by all the kind of stories and narratives and expectations that we place on top of it. You know, squirrels don't run around thinking, you know, oh, guys, my tail fluffy enough. You know, they just get on with it. Humans, our big, nice brains kind of get in the way sometimes. And a lot of it is where we create these stories because we're trying to make sense of the world as we grow up. So, you know, you go through your teenage years, you see that, you know, first person you really like, and you kind of try and start a conversation with them, and they shoot you down in flames, and all their friends laugh and whip you with willow branches and spit on you and stuff.
Are you speaking from experience or just an example that you've pulled out of?
I wish I was joking, but that's another story. But so things like that, then in our heads, we're like, wow, this is painful. This is a painful area, or this is something where if I'm vulnerable, or if I just shared the wrong aspect of myself, then I'll be judged and I'll be condemned and I'll be rejected. So it's better to do kind of a bait and switch thing, and like build a wall here and sort of bait someone in with socially acceptable attractiveness traits, and then piece by piece, if you're honest, you want to show them some more. Exactly, yeah. I can't do that because I'm not as cute as you, but but then piece by piece, well, some guys, they just spend their whole lives behind the walls, and women too. And then generally it's like, well, piece by piece, I'll show you more and more of who I really am, and hopefully who I really am and who you really are will be compatible after our dating personas have established that they are compatible. So it's like dating, but with extra steps, you know.
In the olden days, you used to just have to dance in the corner, and you'd go and be like, "Will you go with my mate? Who's your mate? The one dancing?" Like that was like the squirrel run around with its fluffy tail. That was easy, but like you said, as we get older and we try to make sense of the world, our version of the world becomes very scary, especially just interacting with people. Do you think so? Something that what we are talking about, since we're talking about dating, whenever people do get the compatible stage and they let their wall down, do you notice that people then seem to stop dating their new partner and they just become an entity rather than like I worked with a lot of couples in the past, and I would say to them, well, when did you last date? And they're like, oh, what do you mean? Like, when did you go on a date? Like, when's the last time you went to the cinema and did the popcorn trick or whatever, like had a bit of fun, whatever you do at the cinema, I don't know. But do you find that that's commonplace, that people just, it's like they try really hard and then it worked and they're like, fuck, it worked. And now they don't know what to do anymore, like a dog chasing a car. So, like, have you any advice for people that are, whenever they get to me and maybe when they get to you as well, they're in like a rut at that stage. So what's the advice for keeping this spark alive, keeping the dating and onward?
Yeah, it's literally really well studied. It's one of the biggest causes of relationship breakdown is that people stop dating each other. You know, especially when you get to the point where you move in together and you are like you're a social entity together. And so you're sharing your lives together. So when you're dating, you're sharing the nice bits of your life, or you are part of the nice bits of each other's lives, right? You look forward to it, and that's a great thing. And when you move in together, you're sharing all of your lives, and life is a serious business. It's, you know, there are challenges in life, and there's stress, and there's freaking house moves, and there's, you know, pets and family members and all kinds of stuff. So it's like life's a serious business, and if we're not careful, you can get into that just like colleagues or brothers and sisters in arms going through the battles of life thing, and the romance doesn't thrive unless you make space for it. And this is not advice that originated with us. It's from psychological studies with thousands of couples. It's make at least an hour every week to date each other. And to make that space for, like in the garden, if you want a flower bed, you've got to look after it. You've got to plant the flowers and water them and feed them and stuff. And so it's making time for the romance and giving that the space, and making time to have a practical conversation where, look, an hour a week, we're just going to catch up and say, what's going on in your life? What challenges are you facing? What challenges are we facing? So like the admin's taken care of.
Yeah.
And then the romance is taken care of as well. So you're making space for the, for the entity to work in alignment with itself.
Yeah, it's just that it's that quality time over quantity. Because, especially with COVID and lockdown, you probably find a lot of couples are spending a lot of time, together and getting under each other's feet. But it's about actually saying, right, okay, what can we do together? How can we actually spend that quality time together and enjoy each other? And it's like without distractions, and just actually having that time to actually fully connect. I think one of the fun things that we've done before now is actually go through something called the 36 love questions. And if you're not familiar with this sort of these questions, so basically it's actually a scientific study that's taken place that there's these 36 questions that you go through that allows even two strangers to fall in love with each other effectively, just through this art of conversation and the uniqueness of that conversation as well. And yeah, it was quite interesting just taking ourselves through just things like that, having those deep discussions, having those those sort of vulnerable discussions as well.
Yeah, that's what if you just Google 36 love questions, the first result that comes up will be that study. And it's not even the art of conversation. You don't even have to be good at conversation. No. It's like, look, here's a question that we're going to discuss for the next 5 minutes. Buckle up. And it takes you on a journey, and the information you get is powerful. And it's like fleshing out the areas of life and the thoughts that maybe you've not thought of for a while. So yeah, it's the intimacy that's not just physical, it's intimacy with the entire person. And it's like, well, if you've lived together, it can reach a point where it's like, well, I already know everything about them. And so going through processes to still stay curious and to go, well, we're both growing, we're complex people. It's like, well, there's more to learn, and keeping that sense of curiosity and adventure is vital. And they really help with that.
Yeah, I think, when you're able to have more of the vulnerable discussions and the chats and having that creating that intimacy in that relationship, it also helps to navigate more difficult situations where if it's like, that thing that you do, it really pisses me off, can you stop? It allows those sort of conversations as well, because that's even really important. Because otherwise, if you let those sort of things simmer in the background, you're going to create distance within that relationship. So it's not just about having the fun conversations and creating that intimacy. It's having the tough discussions that a lot of people don't have to ensure that you grow as a couple rather than pull apart as a couple.
So two things came up for me there. The first thing, whenever you mentioned the conversation you're sitting with the page, I don't know what this says about how I feel about love and relationships and stuff, but I immediately had the scene from Monty Python where they were at the restaurant. And the guy was like, here's some conversational starters for you. So I don't know what that says about me, but it's not about me, so let's move on. So before people Google it, what's your favourite question that was in the 36 that you went over?
Oh, I can't think. They're so varied.
Yeah.
And they all go into very different areas. So basically it takes you on this emotional journey where you have like the highs and the lows through the questions. So
trying to think of a high. If you're thinking of one there, think of a high. We don't want to go too long.
I'm like, keep stalling. Go on, keep going. I'll get one.
See your head drifting further away into it.
Interesting element of it is that at the end of the questions, and this is going to sound really, really awkward, is that you actually sit down and stare in each other's eyes for 4 minutes. And it might sound something like a little bit weird, but actually just having that connection for that time it creates a deeper connection within that relationship, especially when you've gone through things that are quite vulnerable.
I was going to tell you that there was an artist who did I don't understand art, especially this sort of art, where she sat in a chair and people had 2 minutes just to stare at her. and then they interviewed the people after, just since you were talking about the 4-minute stare.
Yeah.
I imagine, like, she did it, and then one of her exes just appeared, and they had a horrible breakup and never spoke.
I saw
And
that.
then that happened, and after they were all like, that really cleared the air. But I can imagine, like you said, it would be awkward. I can imagine, even like you are a strong couple, even for you it was weird. So for like people that aren't as comfortable in their relationship, would probably put them off. I have to stare at you for 2. Fuck, I'm not doing that. I'm from the country, kind of stuff.
It actually releases, doesn't it release oxytocin into the brain as well whilst you're doing that?
Yeah.
So it's something to do with like the actual hormone and chemical levels in your brain that happens when you're actually doing that.
I think we actually did that on our first date.
Oh my gosh, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of you had planned this, one of you had read it, was like, or did it happen? Was it like a movie?
See that?
Did you just lock eyes and you were like,
oh my gosh, well, we
Yeah.
actually met through a hypnosis course.
Yeah.
So that was quite funny. You were already a pro, so you were showing off.
Yeah, I was this cocky hypnotist.
is there such a thing as a non-cocky hypnotist?
Showing off in the room and
It's like, stick your hand to here. How do you know you're not hypnotized? Like what?
yeah, both of us are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, just by that one moment, you both did it to each other. That's quite clever.
Yeah.
Since we get on to how you met, how did you meet? And then, like, were you dating specialists before you met? Or how did that? Whenever you met, did you know he's lying about that, or she's lying about that, or like?
So yeah, I think I'd started off my business probably about a year.
Yeah.
I was actually dating someone else when I met Jonam.
Yeah.
Didn't know what to grab. Was shocked.
I know. It's called research.
Turns out the other guy was, you know, when you're on the bus and you put your bag on the seat next to you to save a place for someone else.
Yeah, like it.
You can't just say that. You are so bad.
Part of me hopes he watches this. I'm sorry, bus man, arm guy.
Oh my god, you are so bad.
Kind of romantic when you think about it. He sent someone to hold his place because he just wasn't ready for you yet. And when he was ready, he moved that man along or something.
It was cosmically aligned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cosmically aligned.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think after we met, we just started talking loads, and we
We were friends for a while.
Yeah,
for about a year.
Yeah, we're actually talking to each other about our own relationships and dating.
Sabotaging each other. She sounds terrible. Move her along.
Yeah, and then I think it was a year after we met, we started getting into the behavioural profiling stuff. So when we actually started learning, well, you learned a lot of it before me, and then when I started learning it, I think it sort of brought us pretty close together, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, do you want to tell that story of the
yes,
how you got introduced
to
the behavioural? Because this was a really cool, how you got introduced to the behavioural profiling world. Because it was, that's what highlighted the need that led us to create like the courses we've made and everything. So
thanks.
Just nicely pass the buck along.
I'll sit down, shut up. No, I'm joking. So cut long story short, I actually went through some pretty toxic relationships. One where I was stalked for a good 5 years. And so you kind of get a feel for someone who's not got the great intentions and kind of got that sort of lock-in, targeted, I need to stalk you kind of energy about them. And I was single. I was going through Tinder, of all bloody dating apps, and met this guy and started messaging. And it was really weird. It was sort of just, only after the first few messages, you just know whether it's someone that you kind of want to meet or not. And I just sort of binned this guy off. I thought, right, okay, no, he's a bit weird. Okay, I'm just going to leave it. And he messaged me the next day, I totally ignored it. And then the following day, I got 12 pink roses sent by Interflora. Somehow, from just my name, from my Tinder profile, he'd managed to find out where I lived and sent me flowers.
He was a good stalker then? Like he was...
Oh my gosh. Well, the funny
well
thing
practiced.
is... oh, it's just mental. Like I was really freaked out. My mum, bless her, she's like, oh, so when are you going to see him? That's really sweet. And the sad thing is, that's what most people think. You know,
Yeah.
people think, okay, you've given me something. This is actually a part of is it Robert Cialdini's Persuasion and Influence. If you give someone something, they feel obliged to give something back. And kind of knowing the type of person this person was to be able to stalk me like that, I knew this wasn't going to be one of those block and it'll be over and done with, because this guy knew where I lived. And at the time, I knew that Jonam was working with Chase Hughes, so he's the world leader in behavioural profiling. And I knew that I kind of needed help with this. I didn't want to be stalked for another 5 years. And, you know, it was a bit like, okay, if one of my clients goes through this as well, how am I going to support them? How am I going to be able to know exactly what to do to keep them safe? Because it's not just about me, it's about, you know, potentially working with a client who's, you might have kids and things like that. So it's making sure that I knew everything that I needed to. So I sent over to Jonam like the picture of the profile, pictures of the messages. I think I've still got the screenshots, you know.
Yeah.
And Jonam forwarded them on to Chase. And I got this awesome breakdown of like what I should do. And literally within, I think it was like 3 or 4 messages, all of a sudden this guy wasn't interested anymore. And I didn't have to be confrontational. I didn't have to be rude. It was just all very nicely done. It just diffused just beautifully.
Nice.
And it was like, wow, okay, if it's that simple, you know, to actually use and tailor it to someone, I need to know this. And that's how I ended up on the behavioral profiling course, partnered up with Chase, because it was just, yeah, such an awesome opportunity to be able to use this information. Because I think it's something like $30 million worth of
30, yeah.
$30 million worth of research, like, you know, to train military operatives in life or death situations. And we get to use this to help women date safely and successfully.
Brilliant.
You know, it's awesome, absolutely awesome. And then, the rest was history.
So a couple of things off the back of that. One, which is a massive question, because wasn't there a saying like how do friends become lovers, or friends can be lovers but lovers can't be friends, or something? So I want to get back to, how do people go from, like, how do you make the step of going, look, we've been friends forever, but actually I want more, and how do you deal with that? And the other thing that came up for me was, because you found a stalker, do you think people from doing profiling, like I know from looking at people's Facebooks and everything, like I could find your house. Like, it would not, like, people put so much information on there without even knowing. Like, even in the country that I live in now, like I know police officers that I say to them, like, I could find your house. And we don't really live in a country where that's a good thing to happen. So, first of all, how do people, like, have you advice for people that want to make that shift?
I think one thing that was like really profound with us was we actually said to each other that we really valued our connection and, you know, what we had as friends. So we kind of made that agreement, like, no matter what happens, we kind of still want to be in each other's lives, and we want to prioritize each other and prioritize, you know, what we have. And I think both of us wanting that and prioritizing that, I think it made it easy for the relationship to develop. It built that trust.
And the framework around that is the communication standards to be able to have a conversation like that. Which is all around honesty, right? It's honest, it's vulnerable, it's, you know, you're kind of putting yourself on the line somewhat, and getting over the fear of that enough to just say, well, look, this conversation, this relationship is a place where you can be 100% honest with me, you can be 100% human and flawed and like just be real, and I'm cool. In fact, I prefer that. So there's zero judgment and 100% just honesty, and just show up and be yourself. So when you have that 2 ways, then you can have the conversation that says, well, look, you know, we've been friends for a long time, we get on awesomely, and we fancy each other. So so what's the, you know, what are we messing about with? And you can have that and just be frank.
It was quite interesting actually, because we actually got together during one of Chase's courses, and I just literally
literally during the course.
That sounds good.
It was a popular course.
Across the room.
I had like just learn a lot of these elements, you know, being able to see the truth within someone, within, you know, when they're talking to you, are they actually being truthful? You know, seeing how to profile someone within 6 minutes or less. And it was like really interesting when you know, using this and seeing what was in front of you after having those eyes. I mean, I sort of mentioned I had very toxic relationships in the past, so my trust levels were absolutely crap. And when I could actually see that Jonam turned around to me and said that this was something that he really wanted, and you could see that it was real and it was true. There wasn't, it sort of took away the fear and the risk, if that makes sense. So it's all of a sudden you can actually connect and feel safe to do so without that risk or that fear anymore.
Yeah, because romance is inherently, like, just by definition, it's like we grow up reading or hearing about Romeo and Juliet, and it's this huge infatuation thing, and it's all like freaking tragic, and it's all based on lies and fantasies about each other, and like, that's just not practical. Yet that's the lifeblood of the romantic dream that we're sold culturally, and it just doesn't really work. And so when instead, to turn it to a more positive angle, just fucking give up.
No.
So instead, when you get to that level where it's based on, like Lily says, truth, it's not me projecting my fantasies onto you. It's not me projecting my idealized things of what I want to see. It's like not having the rose tinted glasses. And also, if you dip your glasses in crap, even the roses will look brown, as a good friend of mine says. So it's ditching the filters and the preconceptions about people, and just saying what's literally here right now, and what can I do, and engage with that. What's the truth in this person? So you're not looking for red flags, you're not looking for green flags, you're just taking the person in. And that's just creates the baseline where you're building upon truth, whether it's you know warts and all, and from there you can actually have something solid, rather than it being, well, I think he means this, so I'm going to say what I think will get the best result as a response to what I think he's thinking.
I think what was really important there is both of you put it that you both knew, you both were interested, like, and you were able to sit and have an adult conversation and be like, well, look, we really like this connection. One of the things I would ask people in the past when they would say about they really want to ask out their friend or whatever, I'd be like, could you have an adult conversation with your friend about how you feel in general? And they're like, no. Well, then fucking don't ask them out, because if you aren't that connected, then they might not be as interested as you are in them. They might see, like, people don't do what, like you're saying, like, look at the whole picture. They think, I think they like me because, especially in a wee town where I grew up, they like me because they're my friend. You're like, that's not how it works. Maybe they just are your friend. So there's a few things I want to come back to, but I want the bit about people putting too much online. Do you help with that as well? Do you explain to people, like, well, I suppose whenever you're profiling, that's how we profile people in general. I don't do it the same way as you do, but like me, whenever I trained with Ben, he would send me pictures, and it got to the point where it was weird, where I would get screenshots of female friends' Tinders and be like, what do you think of this guy? And I was like, he's handsome. What do you want me to say? But I'd have to send back, like, I think whatever I think is my on their opinion on whether they should date. And most people don't listen to me anyway when it comes to dating, because I'm single. They're like, fuck, what does he know? I'll just do it anyway. So you help with that as well. Do you think that it is a problem? Like, people put so much shit on social media and even on their Tinder. Like, you can look at a Tinder and go, I could walk to your house and be like, hello.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like, you know, people, I think people can be a little naive with their profiles, but I think it boils down to something even more simple than that. and it's basically saying, okay, who are you interacting with?
Yeah.
If you're looking at because we actually had obviously had Ben on the podcast as well, or the interview as well. And Ben's a part of our team. He's freaking awesome, and he was actually training people how to profile dating profiles, because what can happen from this is you can gather so much information, and you can say, okay, is that person safe? Is that person going to be someone who's going to be compatible with me? Which again is really, really important, because if you're someone who likes to Netflix and chill, probably someone who's constantly at the gym and really athletic isn't going to be, the right person for you in terms
They're
of...
going to want to do a different Netflix and chill.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's kind of taking things to that kind of level. I mean, before we actually took Ben on, we actually put him through a bit of a test, didn't we?
Yeah, I was curious.
You were.
Because I thought, well, not in the sense of testing Ben, because I know he's great, but I was like, I just want to give people proof of concept in this field of dating and relationships. So, well, how can you do that? Because if you send over a picture and we say, no, he's a douche, don't see him. So, okay, I won't see him. And you never find out.
Yeah.
Like, you don't find out how that could have turned out. So I thought, well, what I'll do, I will search serial killers and photos of them, like dating profile photos of serial killers, and ended up finding one that, like, a collection thing. So send these photos across to Ben with no real backstory. It's like, hey, what do you think of this guy? And instantly he broke it all down. He's like, no, this thing, that thing, that thing, the name, the the clothing choice, and he dissected it and explained, like, pretty much exactly. He's like, right, this guy has a predisposition to violence, predisposition to drug abuse, and is attracted to or grooms minors. And it just looked at him and said, if he was going to commit a crime, and there's this silence, and then goes, paedophile, he grooms children.
Yeah.
And so this guy was a guy called Michael Rafferty, who, if you Google Michael Rafferty killer, comes up, and he literally did to the letter what Ben said. Okay, this is what this guy's capable and highly likely to do. And so, well, if the woman who was seeing him, who got into that situation, if she had consulted with Ben or someone like Ben and listened to that advice, she'd have got information that from that dating profile that would have, potentially saved her life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I just enjoy the two things that people are going to Google watching this interview. 36 love questions. Crazy serial killer man, Ben Cardall.
yeah.
So
Give the FBI man something to think about.
So something that came up there is, you talk a lot about safety of, like, dating, and it's hard from a guy's perspective, because we never think of, like, I've been stalked before, but in my head, like, they couldn't murder me, because I'm like, I have a samurai sword. I'm like, I'll be fine. I should be fine. I'll be all right. Self-defense, swear, she fell on it. But from the other, like, from a woman's perspective, being stalked at all, even just the, like, text message, and then they say they're not interested, and then the drunk, why are you not liking me? So whenever you work with, I imagine it's not just a case of, if I come to you and then I say, I want you to check out my Tinder, and you tell me the crack. You obviously teach this in some way, pass it on. So do you want to give how do you do that? Like, how does someone go from being someone on Tinder that dates assholes? Like, some of the guys I know are fucking brilliant. I hope they're watching this. They're brilliant at being exactly who they need to be until they get to have sex. I could not think of a word all the words that came into my head just sounded terrible. And then after they have sex, they're like, fuck it. But because the girl was dragged along, and she's someone that doesn't sleep with someone on the first date, or whatever fucking rule she has, because she fucked up her own rule, she stays with them until he just tells them to go away. So there's no point then coming to you every so often going, here, what's this guy like?
Yeah.
So have you created something that you can actually pass this on so people can learn about it? Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few things, but yeah, where do you want to start?
Well, the first thing is you can tell a lot from photographs, but obviously the more data you get, the more of an informed opinion that you can arrive at. So, you know, if you meet with someone, they're giving you information the whole time. But it's like that overused the Sherlock Holmes quote, you know, you see, did you observe? Did you see and observe everything that was being shown to you? So as an example, and this is something that we teach, I'll describe the course we have in a second. But for example, you might have a friend who goes to a speed dating event, or they meet a guy, and it's like, well, he's great. He said all the right things. He smiled all the right places. He wants to start a family too, and you know all these great things that are awesome that I really want. And he just seemed to be really honest and open about it, and I've just got a good feeling about it. It's like, okay, but when you add in that the perception to say, right, as soon as you started mentioning, you know, say family or having your own career and that being important to you, his blink rate sped up through the roof. That's a stress indicator. His lips compressed. When he smiled, it was a fake smile because it dropped off the face. His fingers retracted to the palms of his hand, and he retracted his dominant shoulder and his dominant foot right as you started talking about, say, family holidays or how, you know, big your family is, things that are important to you. All of those things are data points that say, okay, his words were right and he was smiling in the right places, but like all these things would point to him not being honest in those areas, although those are areas where he's saying one thing but actually feeling and thinking another. So it's taking the guesswork out of it and giving you the ability to see what's being presented and then make a decision or ask more questions that will give you what you need to know.
It's making that informed decision.
Yeah.
I think that's the important bit. You know, by seeing the truth, you can actually, it gives you choices. I think that's something that's really important. You know, it gives you the choice. Do you want to date a narcissistic partner, or do you want to date someone who's actually capable of having a loving relationship?
Yeah. So there are two lines there's a primary threat and there's a secondary threat when it comes to dating. And the primary, or the initial threat is this person dangerous or manipulative or narcissistic? Are they going to have a toxic impact on my life? And then the secondary threat is, well, is this person a great person but just incompatible? They're just not for me and we could waste each other's time. So that initial one, because that's such an important area, like you need to be able to keep yourself safe.
Yeah, because at the moment, I think the stats are 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men actually go through physically abusive relationships. Not just abusive, but physically.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, safety's first. And I think the most common type of relationships that tend to end up in you know, physical abuse are narcissistic relationships.
Yeah. So we put together with Chase Hughes, who we talk about a lot. He's awesome. Check him out. We put together the Identify and Disarm Narcissists and Manipulators course, which goes through explaining exactly what it is, because it's kind of a weird word and it doesn't, you know, it's not been clearly explained enough in society. Yeah. So
I noticed, just to cut you off there, just because you'd said it, a lot of people get accuse people of being narcissists, and when you say to them, all right, I don't know what a narcissist is, go and explain that, and they go, oh, you know, he's a wanker, like, you know, like, well, that's not the same fucking thing. So have you a brief, like, description for people that don't have a clue or are misplacing the word?
Yeah. So there are a bunch of criteria that you can add up and all of that, but the nutshell version is someone who is self-centered to the degree that they will have no empathy and concern for other people's well-being. So they will be self-centered, they may lie, they may manipulate, may be very good at manipulating. And overall, there's this lack of regard for the boundaries, for the well-being of the people around them. The people around them are supply sources for what they need. And as soon as someone outlives their usefulness, then they get discarded.
Yeah, great example. Yeah, so hopefully that'll make more sense to people who, again, misuse the word quite often. What was the name of the course again? I just want you to say it again because it's so many words. What was it?
Identify and disarm narcissists and manipulators.
So whenever you say disarm, and from my martial art brain is saying, right, disarm is good, but I want, if someone has something I have to disarm, I want to annihilate whatever's in front. So obviously you don't advise people to disarm the narcissist and then continue to date them, I would imagine.
No, but it's kind of like being in those situations where, okay, you usually find that people who date narcissists, it tends to be a bit of a pattern. You tend to find that, okay, they'll go into that pattern of dating a narcissist, another narcissist, another narcissist. And it's about knowing how to identify them. But also, if you're someone who's got kids with a narcissist, you're not going to be able to shake that narcissist off. So you're going to need to know how to at least deal with them in a way where you're not manipulated, where your child's not manipulated, and knowing what to do about it. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Also, with narcissists, it's usually within the first meeting or first couple of meetings, they will automatically try and control. And they'll use empathy, they'll use so many different elements straight off the bat. So if you know what you're dealing with straight off the bat, you know what to do. I think that's really important in terms of keeping safe.
And you probably have, obviously you can't talk about anything specifically, but you're bound to have a lot of examples of people coming back to you and going, that stuff actually works. Like that stuff that you said to me the other day, I met a guy and then it turns out I shouldn't be dating this guy. Is there anything you can tell? Does that come up much for you, or?
Yeah. There's a few. I think there's been people who've been going through court cases who have actually gone through the course to help them navigate in the best possible way their divorces. There's been another lady who actually had to literally uproot and move somewhere else because before, this narcissist was chasing her and all sorts, and she wanted to know how to keep safe. What was the feedback we got from her? Like something on about Tony Robbins.
Yeah, she was lovely. This is like an awesome testimonial. She said, in that course, she said, there's like a ton of information. I got more from that than from the entire weekend with Tony Robbins. Like this was more
pretty good about that.
We gave you more value than Tony Robbins. We're happy with that.
Yeah, and I think another lady as well. Bless her, she'd gone through a lot. Like she had been through a lot, and by going through the course, even though she was in a relationship, she was happy, but she went through the course because she had previous narcissistic relationship, and just by being able to see what had actually happened and to actually understand it, gave her the ability to process it and heal it.
Yeah.
When we can start to understand it and realize, it wasn't us, it wasn't me, it wasn't my fault. You're able to lift the blame and lift that horrible, I can't think of my freaking words, just that horrible weight of that relationship, and you can just let it go.
One of the most common tactics of a narcissistic or manipulative person is gaslighting. And gaslighting, which is another jargony term, but gaslighting is making someone doubt and mistrust their own perception of reality.
Yeah.
And even when you come out the other side of a situation like that, even when it's over, that shake and that faith in our own ability to say, hey, what's going on? That faith can be really undermined. Yeah. So going through the course and just informing ourselves enables you to look back and see where the gaslighting happened and see, okay, this was reality and I was picking it up, or that's where I was duped. And it's like giving that peace of mind to say, well, now I can trust my perceptions because I've got this clarity now.
One of the things I noticed with different relationship people that I worked with was they got tied up because whoever was the narcissist in the situation, whether it was the man or the woman, they would say, you're just feeling that because of your past. Your ex was really bad to you and now you're blaming me. And you're like, yeah, but he punched you in the head. I know, but it was my fault. And you're like, what the fuck? So, like, I remember even being asked, so what I like about you having a program about all this is that, like, I've been asked loads of times by friends in the past, why do I always pick assholes? And I'm like, because you don't have a fucking clue. You don't learn anything about people. You don't read anything. You don't do anything. You just go in blind. And one of the things you said earlier, Lily, was that about choice. A lot of people seem to date and think this is it. There's no choice. Like, this is who I date. And so that was good. There was two questions I had. One was, do you think that people create a pattern of going for narcissists because they have a lack of belief in themselves, or they think they can change someone, or like, what do you think it is that causes that? And so I don't forget, my second question is, do you think it's okay to date more than one person at a time? But first question first.
I love these. So narcissistic relationships, that tends to actually come from a pattern. So if you actually look back, this is most cases, I'd say 80% of cases, if you look back at your childhood and actually have a look at the people around you, you might find there was a narcissistic person around you as you were growing up. And what we tend to do is we tend to gravitate towards people that are familiar. So if
Even
that's
if
a familiar
not
pattern,
good for you.
if that's a familiar pattern and that's what you know, well, you're going to go for what you know. The other side of it, I'd say the other sort of 20% is, trying to think the best way to put this. It's almost like, well, if you're a sheep and you're out there and there's a wolf, well, guess what the wolf is going to do? What a wolf's going to do, and you just happen to be the sheep.
Yeah. So again, courses like yours are going to strengthen that person, so they can't become. They grow out of being a sheep. They don't become a wolf. I don't know what the next. They're not a sheep, but they're not a sheepdog, because they can guide their friends into being strong people as well.
Like Spartan ninja sheep.
A Spartan ninja sheep.
Spartan ninja sheep.
But like it's like a sheep with just a load of wool, because if you think about it, like, you can't get eaten by the wolf then. I don't know, I'm being too technical.
And then so my other question of, I remember watching Tim Ferriss did like quick 10 minutes or 20 minutes segues of like trying to be different things, and one of the things he did was about dating, and he went to LA and he did all this stuff. He worked with Neil Strauss. You probably have heard of him. He's the guy that wrote The Game, which we should talk about at some stage as well. But he ended up getting 3 dates. Like a profiler got him a date, Neil got him a date, and some like high-end like matchmaker got him a date. And they were saying about how you should date more than one person at a time, and if you could date them all at the one place, so then you get to know them and find out who's compatible, so you don't waste 3 months dating this person, find out it's not going to work, and so on and so forth.
Hyper productivity.
Yeah, well, which is what his whole Tim Ferriss's whole game is about. But where I come from, you'd be shot for dating 2 people at the one time, even just madness. But what is your take on, bearing in mind that your past is kind of multiple dating with a guy who was minding the seat on the bus? So
That's great, man. I think with dating multiple people, I think as long as there's no exclusivity, if you've talked about being exclusive, I think then you stick with that, you be truthful with that. Also, it's down to the reason of why you're dating multiple people. Are you dating multiple people for the sake of it, or are you actually thinking, okay, well, both of these people have got these great qualities and I can see myself being with them, I just don't know which one yet. That's different. If you're just dating for the sake of it, you don't waste your time and energy.
I'd agree. It's a case of all going back to that theme of honest communication. If you have honest communication and clear expectations and boundaries with each other and all that, the clear honesty, then it's like you're adults going through life trying to figure something out. And if you have a great connection with someone and you want to pursue it further and then discuss exclusivity, then awesome. It's where deception comes in. And also, like Lily said, the motive. Is it a form of escapism? Is it that you were stung and burned in the past and you don't want to commit to someone because you're scared, which is fine, but it's like acknowledge it for what it is, and then you can heal it, because that's your responsibility as a person, right? It's all of our responsibility to heal. So it's where are we coming from? Are we coming from fear and pain and trauma, or are we coming from love and adventure and exploration and honesty? Most important.
I think
that makes a difference.
I just cut you off there, but I think that, like you talked about communication, honest communication, a lot of people just imply things or infer things. Like they assume because we're on our first ever date ever, that you will not date anybody until we decide not to date, without saying, I would prefer we only date each other. And if you're in a situation where you wouldn't like them dating somebody else, then you should tell them that. I think it's important to tell all that so everybody knows where everybody is and no one can mess anything up. So since I'm talking about double dating, would that be it? No, that's a different term. That's when two couples date together. Multiple dating, that's what it was. Do you think that, like, with the apps like Tinder and Bumble and everything, because I've asked people in the past, but sure, you're dating people and it doesn't count because I haven't actually met them yet. And you're like, well, what's the difference? Or do you think now people's whole mindset on dating and connection is getting messed up by, like, we're coming sort of full circle now back to swiping again? Is it this way?
Depends if you like the person or not.
Yes.
I think it's like, I don't think it's just because of like online dating. I think it's just the way that everything's gone in terms of like online communication, where things have just become quite almost like superficial, less deep. With messaging, I think in the NLP world, like, words are only 7% of communication. So you're not getting that deep connection straight off. You're just getting that from words. And it's like, how can you build and form a real connection or say that you're dating that person when actually, when you logically break it down, you're sending a couple of words to someone. You're not sharing a moment with someone. You're not, touching and feeling someone. It's not that real, 360 degree experience that you're going through with that person. It's just a few words. And because it's only 7% of communication with those words, it can be misinterpreted, and you can also read it in a way that's not actually the way the person meant that message. So if you're prone to the kind of like the rose tinted glasses, or prone to be looking at the red flags, then you're going to be interpreting that message in very, very different ways. So automatically you haven't got a full connection with that person.
Plus, how many guys, if we're honest with ourselves, have said,
all of them,
I love you, in order to get their leg over?
Oh, that's what I'm going to say. That's why I knew what you were going to say. All of them, every one of them, yeah.
Like, maybe you were 17 or 18, but I think everyone has done it if we're honest with ourselves. And that's where the communication, because it's like, well, it gets interpreted like, I'm not responsible for how she interprets that. Is the internal dialogue of the guy. It's like, well, I do, and I love, Cheryl, and I love Daphne, and
and pizza, and chocolate bars, and I love my dog.
Right? And so by having that standard where, look, specifically, clearly, what are our understandings and expectations from this, and are we on the same page? And that sounds like a kind of clinical conversation, but it saves so much freaking stress and issues. It's totally worth it.
Plus, whenever you're texting, if me and you're talking via text and you ask me a question, the first thing I type, I will most likely delete.
Yeah.
And then reword it.
Yeah.
And go, that sounds much better.
Filters.
So instead, where if it was in real life and you asked me, I would just blurt it out. And now I'm like, fuck, I can actually... And I can turn to my mate and go, here, she said this, what should I say now? What do I do now? Like, I've had it, mates screenshotting messages to me and going, how would you respond to this? And I'm like, for fuck's sake. And I would ask, this is terrible. what is your intention? To date her or to get laid? I just want to get laid, then say this. I want to date her, then say this. That's mental, like,
Yeah.
and that's like, but people take it, like you said, it at complete face value. Since you put it so politely, getting your leg over, that was very. Do you think that people put sex on a massive pedestal, that it's like I said earlier about people who have, like, I don't have sex before date 3, and date 3 could be 3 months away, or it could be we had a coffee, then we had dinner, and then the next day we went for a walk, so I banged them that evening, and you're like, well, because you told them 3 dates, I don't have sex for 3 dates, well, I'll just throw them all into one day. Do you think that sex is on a pedestal and people are fucked up with it?
No, I think with sex, I think most people numb. Like, it's like some people binge eat chocolate, some people binge Netflix. I think some people just binge sex. I think if you've genuinely got a good connection with someone and you've got that good understanding, it doesn't really matter if you have sex on the first freaking date. It doesn't matter if you have sex on the 20th date. It's about what you're comfortable with, what your partner's comfortable with. At the end of the day, if you're an adult, you can make adult decisions. Do you know what the repercussions of those decisions are going to be?
Like it's why, like, we live in a country where sex isn't really taught. It might be a wee bit better in school now, but it was so not talked about that whenever people eventually did it, they didn't know what the fuck to do. They didn't know protection. They didn't know anything. So then it becomes a whole scene. And I think that I always thought, before I moved out of this country, I lived in London for a while. I always thought it was just this country but when I moved away and my world opened up and I got to chat to people from all over the world, I was like, no, it's everywhere. Like, people don't know how to approach any of this. They don't know what it's like. There's rules that, like, people don't, like, no one gets it at all. But I love the idea of, you should be adult enough and understand yourself enough that if you want to do it on the first date, fine. If you don't want to do it ever, then don't do it. Which sort of now brings me to, I told you I had coined a phrase. I might not have coined it, but it exists. Convenient dateitis. Have you ever heard of convenient dateitis?
No.
Yeah. I mean, I coined it. So
refer back to you.
Convenient dateitis is when you just date people who are convenient to date. Like, you work in a bar and you just date the barmaid, or you work in a shop and you date the other shop person, or you work wherever. I find that a lot of people's relationships fail because of convenient dateitis. They started dating because that was the only female around or the only male around. So I'm just really happy now that no one else has heard of it and I've coined it.
Yeah, when the pickup line could be translated to "you'll do."
Yeah,
But I think even women, like, do that a lot. When they've had like breakups and things like that. I'm going to cringe saying this now, but like, it's almost like, okay, who are my male friends? Am I being too picky if I friend zone people? Not that I did that with you.
It's fine.
That's
true. You tip out the apple barrel and
it's like, okay, what's about? Okay, what could I think I could make work? Can I sleep with him? Do I have to have my eyes closed? I don't know. It's kind of like having a look at, it's almost like people change tact for the sake of changing tact, because whatever they've done before hasn't used in the past. It's like, okay, what can I do differently? You just do it for the sake of it.
You think of those weird arbitrary dating rules, like the 3-date rule or 5-date rule or whatever they are. When we think about where they're stemming from, it stems from a fear of judgment, right? It's a fear of doing the wrong thing, of being frowned upon, of either other people looking at us in an unfavorable light or us looking at ourselves in an unfavorable light. So there's this air of judgment and, there's constriction there. And it's like, I can't be authentic for fear of being judged, right? So having that frame that we keep banging on about, where it's like, look, you're safe to be honest and open and just communicate what you do want, what you don't want, and a hell yes is fine and a hell no is fine, or a not yet is perfectly fine. But all this kind of read between the lines stuff, if you can do it, fine. But most people can't without training. So the fallback has to be that ability to be honest with yourself first and foremost, rather than doing all this like, oh, I'll drop lots of hints so that the guy seduces me, and then the seductive hypnotist made me do it. It's like,
was that your stage name before all this? Sorry? Was that your stage name before you did all this? The seductive hypnotist?
The seductive hypnotist. That's a whole other podcast. But yeah, it's having that fallback of just direct communication with yourself, where you're happy to admit to yourself what you do and don't want, and you can own it and you can express it. And that takes maturity, mental and emotional maturity.
I think, just to, roll on top of that as well, it's like, it's having your own standards and knowing what you're happy with and what you actually want. Because I think a lot of people, they just assume that a relationship happens, and it's not like that at all. It's like, okay, what is it that you actually want? What to you is a healthy relationship? What does that actually look like to you? What's important to you in that person? What do you want them to prioritize? What's the values and beliefs? What's the overall goal for them? Is it in line with you? And then when you can actually establish those things within that person, you know that you found something that you actually want. And I think people tend to go in blind. And I always refer it to the shopping list. If you go shopping and you're really hungry, you haven't eaten for freaking months, and it's like, okay, let's go into the supermarket. Don't have a list. I'm just going to go on for a binge. You can almost guarantee that you're going to have a load of crap in your shopping, in your shopping trolley that you don't want. There might be a few good things in there that you do want, but you're going to have stuff missing on there in order to actually make a real decent meal.
Yeah.
Decent relationship.
I don't like it as a metaphor that where I'm like a vegetable.
You place yourself as a vegetable, I'm just saying.
Cabbage in a basket. But
weird that you went with cabbage. I thought you would have went with like cucumber or something that was more useful in the old days.
Respectful, but
I like that you've got a shopping metaphor, because whenever I used to work in the pubs and stuff, and the girls would chat to me and they'd be like, where do all the, like, especially when they came in out of town, they'd be like, whereabouts do the good men be and all? And I'd be like, have you ever got drunk and went to Asda and bought a toaster? And they're like, why would you do that? And I'm like, I don't fucking know, but you're going to get drunk and try to find the man of your dreams. That makes no sense to me. So I just like that we all have wee shopping metaphors built in amongst all this.
You're a hypnotist, so you'll like this, I think. I love the idea that you can't make people do things against their will, assuming they have one.
Yeah.
Problem is, most people don't have a will. When you think, we have willpower, but a will as a statement of intent of, this is what I want, these are the non-negotiable must-haves, and these are the non-negotiable must-not-haves. And most people don't have that in hardly any area of life, if at all. So you're just kind of drifting, aimless, rudderless in this sea of causality, and then wondering why you're not ending up on a freaking paradise island. So having the idea, not just some weird arbitrary list of must be this height and have this kind of hairstyle.
The super, if you're looking for something superficial, then guess what? You're gonna
Practical Magic, the movie.
I can't watch the Magic.
Practical Magic, the movie with Sandra Bullock. She like wrote this crazy list about wanting a star and it's all this madness. And
I love that movie. The problem is I can't watch anything like remotely romantic anymore because I get.
Because you're living it.
Because I'm living it. Because I get the voiceover of, that's ridiculous. Why did she do that? If she'd have just told him, I was like, okay.
But it just would have saved half the movie. 20 minutes would have been done. Here, this is what I want. Right, cool.
I'm not all this faffing. I actually introduced him to Pretty Woman because that's one of my favourites.
It's Richard Gere though, so it might be all right.
And he cheated by buying a woman, so he didn't really date her. He just hired her. Well, even worse than even buy her, he hired her. You're mine for a week or whatever. But
yeah, it's not, I think this is the thing, isn't it? It's like all these romantic movies, this is a whole nother conversation, but it's unrealistic expectations. You know, you think
Yeah.
of like even the Disney films as kids growing up, there's this perception of what love should be and how you should meet someone. And yeah.
You have to be in a tower waiting.
Oh.
I don't need to wait. I'm going to do it myself. Get out of my own tower. I don't want to keep these too long. So what a question that I have a couple of questions and then I'll round up unless you wanted to stay here forever, which I could because I'm quite enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
What advice would you give someone who is starting to date, especially in this climate where we can't meet people? So now it is weird because, like, especially over here at the minute, we're back in lockdown, so you can't go and meet anyone. So would you advise doing, because we can't do Zooms, I don't know why the fuck people don't just do a Zoom where you get to see people and stuff and make it more real. It will, and most of the time they'll just be sitting like this.
Yeah.
So, but what advice would you give to people trying to date now, or the minefield of dating that is now?
Yeah, I'd say before you actually do, before you actually get onto an app or, start looking for your potential partner, know what you're looking for. I think that is where so many people go wrong.
How do they do that? How do they start?
Yeah.
How do they?
Yeah, I mean, we have got a free guide on our website that sort of talks people through this. But I'd say have a look at your own values. What's really important within a person, in terms of, are they loyal? Are they honest? What do they prioritize in their life? Do they prioritize family? Do they prioritize travel? Do they prioritize their job? What do they prioritize? Because if you both prioritize similar things, it makes things a lot easier. Also, lifestyle, what sort of lifestyle do you have? I mean, we're both self-employed and that works really well for us, in terms of being able to understand each other's routines, understand each other's commitments. That's really important. Another one is also goals. What's your overall goal in life in terms of your own personal goals, but also your goals for the relationship as well? Because if you've got one person going, oh, I want to live in, I don't know, Singapore, and the other person's like, well, no, I love my family, I love being close and being 10 minutes away from my mum, that's not going to work. There's going to be this divide, there's going to be this resentment of, neither person being able to get what they want. So I think those are kind of like the segments that I'd say would be really important to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, if we say values, belief, and lifestyle. So values are the rules that you, like, if life had a rule book, what are your rules for life, and how similar does their rule book have to be to yours?
Yeah.
And beliefs are the things that you have an opinion on and you know about it. So if you're, say a strict Tory and you couldn't possibly stand to be with someone who's on the left, then that's worth knowing.
Yeah.
Or those types of things. So the beliefs, the things that we hold as important, and we know that we hold as important, and the lifestyle, like Lily said, knowing those ahead of time is a time saver for sure, and it helps you find the right kind of person because they'll stand out more readily.
Yeah,
I think, just to cut you off, I think everyone, even if you have no intention of ever dating ever in your life, should download whatever. I'll put a link to it if you send me a link, because most people I come across, if I say to them, like, who are you in your life? Like, what are your values? When they come, like when I work with anxiety and depression and stuff, I would say, right, we get rid of your anxiety. Then what happens? Who do you be? What do you do? And they're like, what? Like, what are your values? So I think everyone listening should just download that, because if you don't know your own, even if like knowing your own values and all of what you just said for yourself, even before you do anything else, is massively important. So sorry to cut you off, but I just thought that was important to throw out there.
No, it's so true. It's so true, because the funny thing is, again, it's like, you know where you stand within yourself, you know what's important to you. But I think by knowing what you need in a relationship to feel happy, so it stands out. It's like if you suddenly focus on the color blue and go, pick blue because I can see loads of it on the screen. And then I said, okay, when close your eyes and then tell me what's red, you won't be able to tell me because you're too busy focusing on the blue. And I think if you know what you're looking for, like you said, it's just going to stand out and make your dating life so much easier.
Cool. A question I love asking people just for my own curiosity. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh. I think I'd struggle. I'd say something on the lines of like being invisible, because I'd love to sort of, yeah.
Huh.
Because you would love to what? See, if that was a male saying invisible, everyone goes, oh, I of course. Because a woman said it, we're like, right?
Ghosts. No. Yeah, why? Why do you want to be invisible? What do you want to do while invisible? That's the...
What would I like to do with being invisible? No, I'd sort of like have curiosity of like how certain people act behind closed doors and things like that.
So voyeurism.
just make it weird.
That's cool.
As soon as you said invisible, it was weird. Invisible.
And that was going to be my superpower. No, mine's probably mind control.
Mind control. Oh, that is a good one. I like that.
My words.
You kind of have that already, being a
I don't like that. I'm glad you don't have that superpower.
She hasn't figured it out.
These embedded commands.
It's funny, I asked that question. I asked it to all my clients. I asked it to everybody because I feel it's probably a question you've never been asked before, but if you go away and think about it, you can break down what the superpower meant and how that connects to your actual personality, and you'll go, fuck, no wonder I chose that. That's crazy. And it always happens. And when if I can't get through to a client, I ask them stuff, I'll act like I'm lost, and I'll say something like, fuck, you won't answer anything. If you had a superpower, what would your superpower? Because they know, like, can't tell I love superheroes. And I'm like, if you had a superpower, what? As if I don't really care, what would it be? And then they'll say, I'd love to be able to fly. And I'm like, fly fast or just fly in your normal walking speed? And then they go, well, fast, obviously. And I'm like, oh, so you'd like to be able to get away from things really quick? Yeah. And then they're open, and then you can just get in. So it's a fun question to ask people.
Cool.
Nice.
I think that's all I can. I would just end up going on forever. So I'm gonna stop asking questions. Where can everyone find you? And just so they all know just your names, your websites, everything. And in case people can't pronounce your name, how would they pronounce your names? Because sometimes names are hard for people.
So my name's Jonam Ross, and it's kind of an unusual name. So an easy way to remember it is that it's like Jonah and the whale. I'm more delicious, so there's an at the end.
I just love that you said it again with a straight face.
I've said that too many times.
I can just imagine you at a networking event. I am Jonam with a I am delicious.
Well, see, the thing is, I spent my entire adult and childhood life introducing myself to people, and they're like, what? And so I was like, well, I had to come up with some... I'm facing this problem every time I meet another human. So, yeah, that's the solution, and it works wonderfully.
So I just did that because for people who weren't here at the start before I started recording, which is everybody, we had this conversation, and I really wanted to get him to say it on the podcast. So where do people find you? What's the best way to approach you? If they want to find out more, if they want to learn about dating, all of this?
Yeah, so we're on www.lovewithintelligence.com, and we're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and also Instagram as well.
Yep, cool. So Lily Walford and Jen Ross at www.lovewithintelligence.com.
I'll link everything below, so it's easy for everyone to find. Guys, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much for jumping on board, and I hopefully will speak to you all again soon. For everyone who's watching or listening, thanks again. If you have any questions, reach out to any of the three of us. We're all open for questions and very approachable. You might get different descriptions of our names, who knows. So have an amazing day, whatever you get up to, and I will chat to you again soon.